Hey George, how's it going?
Great, Sean. This is an honor. I've never talked to you directly before. I've only read your books and talked to Addie. So this is great.
Oh well, it's an honor, touche. It's an honor to have you on as well. And just by way of introduction, then I was just saying that you were covering the recent pandemic, origins of the virus, and you're going to give us your insights on your lawsuit against CNN and Jeff Zucker and the weapon story you've been working on. But what got you into this stuff in the first place?
No, man. I, like you, Sean, was doing great outside of journalism. And it's like falling off a cliff. And
Uh,
then like the coyote when he was against the Roadrunner as an American cartoon, they just have a big puff of smoke when they finally hit at the bottom. Well, that's not journalism. Journalism is hitting the side of the rocks and just keep get hitting. But I, you know, I got into it just probably the same reason you did. You wanted to tell the truth, and you can't stand being lied to. And even if it hits you big time economically, you got to tell the truth. That's just, yeah.
yeah, working in the stock market in the 90s, Enron, and then the 9/11 insider option trading just completely woke me up to how the world really is run.
Yeah, the that whole run up, I benefited from that being in high tech on the West Coast in the whole .com thing. But Enron was just a complete fake shell on shell on shell company. And isn't it interesting, Sean, that you always pre-wire your buildings for explosives just in case there's a terrorist attack. And even the buildings that don't get hit are
Uh,
pre-wired the day of 9/11. That's weird. And that's where they were doing the Enron investigation, the SEC Enforcement Division in Building 7. Isn't it interesting that also had to get pulled?
Good old Kenny Lay. I remember
Yeah.
when he got arrested, I said, this guy's never going to get his day in court.
And he was cremated in one day, right? They took him to Colorado where you can cremate in one day after they die, and he was gone. And Skilling was the same thing. I think Skilling got killed as well, didn't he? Or put in jail.
I can't remember what happened to Skilling, but we did start tonight out with Janice McAfee, and she was telling us that they won't give his body up. They've had it for over a year now.
Oh, really? Oh, so she was on the show before this.
She was on at the beginning, yeah.
I met John in high tech. I worked for McAfee for a while, and when it had gone, he had left and had gone to Network Associates. But interestingly enough, a guy named Dmitry Alperovich, who's at CrowdStrike now and did the DNC hack, we bought a company at Network Associates, 12 hackers from Moscow, and they sat in Network Associates on the McAfee side, and they wrote viruses. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, I thought they were going to write antivirus. No, they were writing the viruses to release so they could generate the big sales at the end of the quarter when people were trying to close their books. And I wasn't involved in any of this journalism stuff until I saw he was the guy who was leading the investigation into Hillary's DNC hack. I said, hey, you got the wolf here. You don't have the chicken. This is the guy going into the. And right then I said, this can't be right. Everybody's being lied to. That's when I got into it. It's when I
What
saw Dmitry Alperovich. Yeah.
what was John like in person?
He's a bragger. He actually moved back to Portland, and I was close to him and kind of saw him a lot when I was downtown. And he had gone through a big cycle where he had been in trouble with the law, and then he had been done some kind of informant thing and helped the government, and then now he was okay again. And then he had uh, two or three girlfriends that were all in their 20s down there on that island, and he was taking 10 Viagra a day. This is crazy stuff. But he was a bragger. But not that he didn't deserve. I mean, he did a lot. He started in Silicon Valley driving his van up and down 101, giving out antivirus software on diskettes, going up against some pretty big companies. So I got to give him credit for that.
So what are these weapons stories then you've been working on?
Oh gosh, chasing weapons is the world's least rewarding as far as the kind of crap you get. But governments, unfortunately, want to protect their oil. They want to protect. They want to get resources, the rare earth metals, the uranium, you name it, any war metal, if you will. So they do a lot of deals in secret. Iran Contra. I was just talking to Peter Dale Scott. We were talking about Iran Contra. But they will do the deals. Dick Cheney will put an American command system in Kazakhstan if he has oil that he wants in Kazakhstan. So there's all these secret deals that end up happening. And where I kind of got into it was not really the covert Ollie North. We're going to put in mercenaries. I got into it with more of these bioagents and bioweapons, where you want to clear a pipeline from point A to point B across 7 countries, and you don't need the whole country. You only need like a 10-mile swath, like the old railroad days, 10 miles either side of the right of way. And I started looking at these bioagents coming out of Fort Detrick and coming out of Fort Belvoir, which is sort of the place that does the viruses and the vaccines. They get the recipe, if you will, from Fort Detrick, and then they're the cake and bake shop, at Fort Belvoir. So I spent a lot of time at these American forts chasing these bioweapons, chasing uranium as well. And I've been doing that for 6 years. I can't believe it.
Wow. How big is the weapons industry these days?
Getting close to $1 trillion. I think England's interesting. I've had a chance to visit England this year, your beautiful country. And I spent a lot of time over there in Salisbury with Porton Down, and chasing Russians and chasing different folks, MI6 people. And so I don't know anything about, here's the F-35 from Lockheed, and here's all the things that are wrong with it and all that, which is the big budget part of the defense budget and the NATO budget. I work on a very small sliver of the budget, which is really the dark weapons, the stuff that they can't talk about or is not public. So if you look at the stuff Porton Down is doing, or, like anthrax, coronavirus, the weaponization of coronavirus, or all the hemorrhagic fevers. So it's kind of like, if there was a reading room, if there was a journalist reading room or waiting room, I would be in the way, way, way back corner, bio corner. And everybody else would be talking about tanks and guns and weapons, and I'd be back there with test tubes. So that's me.
Sounds like a bio corner of a house of horrors. What are the scariest things you've discovered in that corner?
Well, the coronavirus, I believe, is a 20-year project. There are a whole bunch of things that we inherited from 2 big programs. One is the Nazis, believe it or not. So the Nazis were working on all this same stuff. The hemorrhagic fevers, Marburg. Marburg didn't just come out of nowhere. The Ebola didn't just come out of nowhere. They actually come from the old Nazi programs. We brought those people here to the United States at Fort Detrick. You can't believe this. Guy named Eric Traub, Kurt Blom. What? We brought in the Nazi bioscientists too with IG Farman? Yeah, we did. And then there was another wave that hit at the end of the fall of the Soviet Union, where we brought in a lot of these guys. So I've gone to a lot of the places they're at, Ken Allebeck from the BioPreparat program, and we've taken their stuff. And here's the logic. Well, this could fall in the hands of a terrorist. So we need to develop a defensive program, which is really could be an offensive program, to make sure that if it ever did fall into the hands of the enemy, that we would have a vaccine. And that really starts after 9/11. And Fort Belvoir, the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, DTRA, is the place where that happens. So coronavirus, anthrax, brucella, just a whole bunch of stuff that monkeypox, you name it. There's a program.
So I'm familiar with who we brought in at the end of World War II. You said we brought a load in during the fall of communism. So are you referring to like Russian scientists and stuff,
Yeah.
or okay?
Yeah, Russian scientists. They had a big program in Nova Sibirsk, which is in western Siberia, but somewhere in the middle in Siberia. Semipalatinsk. There was a couple of different places there was a huge program. It was about 10,000 it fluctuated, but it was more than 10,000 people that Ken Allenbeck had in the biopreparat program. 10 major, locations. But this guy named Jens Kuhn was the major diplomat that was taking all the biopreparat stuff, and this Project Vector it was called, and bringing it all back to Fort Detrick. And then what they were doing at Fort Detrick is saying, well, we can't release the weapon in order to develop the vaccine, because that would be just like attacking ourselves. But what we'll do is we'll attenuate it. We'll make it not quite as deadly. And then we'll release it in a place like Haiti, or we'll release it in a controlled place like Africa, where nobody's going to know too much. We'll try to make people sick. If a couple people die, well, then that's just kind of the rub of the green. We need to develop a vaccine. And then they would develop the vaccine at Fort Belvoir, DTRA. This cycle has gone on ever since the fall of the Russian program, the biopreparat program. We just don't know it. We just don't recognize that this program exists for coronavirus. So where I really started getting involved in this was in looking at the bioagents used in Libya, and then Syria, then Sudan, then Yemen, then potentially in Kazakhstan and Georgia, and just different places that are not very famous but have a lot of oil in the world. And I see this program, SARS, MERS, SARS-2, CoV-2, which is coronavirus now, is a 20-year program. And these releases, sort of like small incremental vaccinations, if you will, small releases that then they develop the vaccine, are sort of what they call a live exercise at the State Department. It's run by the State Department. And this is the idea that, well, we'll give you a little bad stuff and then see if you get sick, and then how to get you better. And then we'll give you a little bit more, and then a little bit more. And then you'll eventually develop an immunity to this stuff. That's a long one. That's a long description.
No, this is fascinating, George. It sounds, what you're describing here is like a fusion of big oil, big pharma, the military industrial complex. I'm curious what you suspect the end game is then for...
That's the book right there.
Drugs on the War.
Yeah.
What do you suspect the end game is for this entity? And is this, are all those sectors of industry, just if you trace them all the way back, controlled by the same powerful people?
Well, I think there is this overlap when you start going from, take it all the way back to Rockefeller. The oil was like, hey, did you realize, Mr. Rockefeller, that if you made drugs out of this barrel of oil, it's worth 1,000 times more than the barrel of oil? That's when Rockefeller said, okay, clear my schedule. How do I get into this drug business? Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld is the CEO of Cyril, I think it was. A lot of these people come from oil backgrounds in the DOD, or they come from the drug backgrounds. And they seem to be the same people involved in continuity of government, as an aside. But you get the idea is, hey, wait a minute here. With the same resource, same barrel of oil, we're going to get 1,000 times more money here. Now, what if you could take a weapon of an enemy and then dose it out in such a way to create an international panic, sort of like a bio 9/11, then I would have tremendous demand for the vaccines I've already developed. We've already been developing these as a part of our counterterrorism for the last 30 years. They're sitting on the shelf. We're going to make out like bandits if we can do bio 9/11s, little baby bio 9/11s here. We're going to make some bucks. And that's what's happening. When you throw the profit motive in, I think, is when things go. For instance, Moderna never was a real company. They never shipped a real product. They were always a DARPA creation from day one. They basically took a library of stuff that they had worked on at Fort Belvoir, DTRA, a library of 9 years, and basically just created a little baby bio 9/11 and pushed through mRNA and experimental mRNA vaccination technology as fast as possible. There was no looking at, hey, let's see if there's a natural vaccine. Let's look at the DNA vaccines that we've already have. None of the normal things you would normally do. It was just like, no, we must do DARPA's mRNA. And I think when you look at the Pfizer side of it, and then over on your side of the pond, AstraZeneca, it's sort of like 5 poker players who are going, okay, after we do this, you get this many chips, you get that many, you get that many. And everybody takes about a third or a fourth, you know, and that seems to be the game that's going on. And monkeypox is coming. Congo Crimea hemorrhagic fever is coming. They've got a whole shelf full of stuff that they can pull off and do these little baby bio 9/11s.
Yeah, I was recently approached by some people who are selling short the stock of Moderna and Pfizer, and I advised caution because these guys dictate government policy, and that is just a money-making thing right there, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they're in control of when I call it a clockwork orange, again, another England reference, but you take a little bit of blood. You have to, unfortunately, some people die when you do these little live exercises. But most of it is yellow fear. So you put the yellow fear together, you put it together with the red blood, you get orange. That's what, and it's released on a clockwork basis. So that's, I think it's a better than the movie. If you've seen Clockwork Orange, it's not really that good. A guy likes milk. I mean, that's not such a great story.
I mean, if you look at the profits of these companies, though, they're staggering. I mean, how much money do these people want? Isn't there like a limit where they can just stop doing this stuff? I mean, what?
I don't think they look at it like that. I think they look at it like control. And they say, wait a minute, the world population is 6.4 billion. What plan do we have in place just in case there is a food shortage or an energy shortage? How do we make a selection, or can we make a selection? Wouldn't it be great if we could vaccinate who we wanted to keep? And then, well, if you didn't get the vax, then you were probably a 9/11 guy anyway, or you were a January 6th guy. You deserved it. You deserved to die. I think that's also in the back of their plans. There's a Dick Cheney, Wolfowitz kind of logic here that says we got to have a plan if the world has too many people. I'm not saying it's a depopulation plan, but I am saying, we need to learn how to thin the herd before it becomes too big of a problem. And so I think they see this as a national security thing. So if they make tremendous amounts of money, well, that's just kind of an aside. But I think they go to work every day thinking, what are we going to do? David Rockefeller just asked me, when he was alive yesterday, what do I do when the population hits 6.5 billion? That's the dynamics I think that are going on.
How does Ukraine fit into all this?
Wow. What a great question. There's this guy named Kolomoisky, and he is the guy who runs Azov Brigade. He's the guy who put Zelensky into the presidency as a puppet. Remember, Zelensky was a latex dancer, I think he was. So he was a comedian. He was a funny guy. But he was on this 1+1 network of this Igor Kolomoisky. And we had been following Igor Kolomoisky in dark weapons since 2016 because he seemed connected to this guy named Eric Braverman that was running the Clinton Foundation doing these covert missions, covert operations in Libya and Syria. So we were looking at Kolomoisky since then. He was also involved in the 2014 overthrow of Donbass or 2000 overthrow of Yanukovych, which leads to Azov, this mercenary army getting brought in structurally, sort of like bringing the brown shirts into the German army, bringing the SS into the German army, and then poke the bear. Then the next 8 years, Their job is this mercenary army, poke the bear to get Russia to invade, and then we get the reconstruction. There was a movie called The Mouse That Roared, where you poke the big bear to attack you so that then they give you reconstruction money. And there's a $750 billion reconstruction plan on the table. This is reconstruction before, like Hitler's invaded Russia, the parallel, in World War II. And they're already carving up reconstruction, if you can believe that. Kolomoisky is the most unknown name, but I think he's the most important name. He's way more important than Zelensky. But he's an international criminal. I've been to his house in Switzerland. He can't go back to Switzerland. He's been sanctioned by the State Department, so it's not like I'm beating up on some guy who's not internationally known. He's sort of like a Mark Rich kind of guy, running these illegal things. We were looking at him at a news gathering, news conference summit that we done in Washington, D.C. for spraying coronavirus and other kinds of agents in Hong Kong right before the breakout of coronavirus in China. So there's a lot of pies that he's got his fingers in. So to me, Ukraine is all about Kolomoisky.
Could these reconstruction greedy calculations go astray, though, and this could escalate from proxy war to nuclear war?
Oh, well, absolutely. Oh, first of all, when the big story I got involved in was saying the bio event, the little baby bio event, was the Wuhan military games. The Wuhan military games in October, a little bit about a month before when the traditional people say that coronavirus spread. And we were taught, the Chinese foreign ministry was saying the Americans brought it. The American delegation brought it. And the Americans were saying it's the Wuhan flu, the Kung flu. You guys did it. And this is active war type stuff. So I think we got close to a conflict there. I think we're getting close to a conflict in the South China Sea right now, supposedly. We're certainly close to a conflict in Ukraine. I don't know if it's to scare the bejesus out of all of us so that we give them even more money. We've already given $100 billion here in the United States to Ukraine. But you keep cycling up. I spent one night in France in a room next to a Ukrainian arms dealer and then two bodyguards on either side of me. I was like, how did I get in this hotel?
Wow.
But they were buying long range, very precision guided munitions. And, the HIMARS now has taken it to the 60-kilometer type range. But they're talking about, you have the Harpoon missile that is in the 300-kilometer that can be repurposed, and now you're going to hit targets in Russia. Now you're going to hit that bridge that Putin likes so much, the Kerch Bridge. And they're talking right now, Ukrainians, about a 300-kilometer, the upgraded version of the HIMARS, which is the longer range. And every time you do this, it's kind of like chicken. You hope that everybody, keeps the lid on this thing, but it could blow off at some point.
Goodness. Do you think China is going to take Taiwan then?
I think no. I think Nancy Pelosi is going to make a big, I'm going to, like Kennedy said, HP9 Berliner. Nancy Pelosi is going to say HP9. Where am I? and they don't speak German here. I thought all I had to do was say HP9 Berliner, and everybody was going to cheer. So I don't think they're going to do that. But I think the real battle in the South China Sea is the oil rights, the oil and gas rights. Really, if you look at it, Taiwan is, it's nice. It's some, nice island and so forth. But what they really want is oil and gas and the shipping lanes. And China's going to get them. Or if they don't have them already, they built those Channel Islands out there already. So I think a lot of this other stuff is bravado. And may I say, Sean, before we get any further, thank you to Addy Ads for setting this up.
Oh,
I should have.
Great guy.
He is a great guy, and I just want to say thanks to him for setting this up.
Definitely. So, and in terms of Ukraine, then was that a resources play as well?
Yeah. Oh, very good question. The heavy metals in eastern Ukraine are Donbass is known for titanium. Kolomoisky, big titanium guy, big tunneling guy using the Elon Musk technology to tunnel into Donbass and get all the oil and gas. So, but also lithium. There's a big lithium presence there. So Elon Musk is interested in that. But in the Black Sea, they've also found a huge amount of oil and gas reserves as well. It's not a Leviathan type find that you find in the Eastern Mediterranean, but a pretty huge thing they're fighting over. And I think Putin wants his stake in it. That's why I think Putin's gone beyond Donbass. If you notice, a little bit down almost to Kherson, it's like, yeah, I'm going to be around for when we're pumping the gas and oil out of here. I think Putin is a lot more of an oil and gas guy than people think he is.
What shady deals were the Bidens involved in Ukraine?
See, I think Hunter Biden is sort of a Lee Harvey Oswald in this whole thing. He holds up the encrypted BlackBerry that they all use, for doing the deals. And yeah, hey mom, here's, turn off flashlight. But I think this guy named Cofer Black, the CIA guy who's been in oil and gas with Dick Cheney and all the Project for New American Century guys, he really uses Hunter Biden sort of as like the village idiot kid that they bring in at the end, put the Russian prostitute in the thing, give him some cocaine, hidden cameras everywhere. And that takes the whole, it's sort of like, we're going to do our business in this hotel room and Hunter's over there. He just plays the role. I think he enjoys playing the role of the fool. And he's kind of laughing about it. He gets to live in a beautiful place. He doesn't have to work at all. The place he lives in Los Angeles is gorgeous, looks out over the ocean. And every once in a while, somebody has to print a picture or play a movie of him doing something embarrassing with some prostitute. So what? It's like he's accepted the TMZ lifestyle. And I think he's done that because his brother didn't play it that way. His brother, said, I got some backbone and I'm going to stand my ground. And he ended up dead. Remember, Joe Biden's girls were, weird, crazy accident, killing his wife and his little girl. So that family has had so much tragedy. So I don't pick on the Bidens. I had a guy who was a Biden advisor in 2017 give me a phone or drop me a phone, an encrypted phone from the Senate. And it said, hey, we did a lot of energy stuff, but we didn't do this covert stuff, this Libya, Syria, Sudan, all that. We didn't do that. And I believe him. So far, everything he said over those 5 years, 6 years now, has checked out. That the Bidens were, I think when it started, Hunter was like, hey, I'm really going to use my law degree. I'm really going to make $83,000 a month. I made it. And then he realized the first time the first film came out, he goes, no, I'm just the clown. I'm just the rodeo clown they bring out to divert people from these deals.
I mean, it's quite sad to see his dad shaking hands with invisible people, making all of these speech, mistakes and using cheat sheets, etc. But should he really be in that position, and how long are the American public going to stomach that for?
And then get Kamala. I would rather have Biden. I've met Kamala Harris, and I've talked to her a lot. I spent a lot of time on Capitol Hill when she was a senator. I'm not impressed with her. Again, Joe Biden, in the early days, he was a pretty sharp guy. I even liked him in 92 for, running for president. That's a long time ago. That's, 30 years, whatnot. But as long as he doesn't fall or run or trip over something, I'm okay with him being president until the election. The invisible handshake and stuff, it's kind of fun, because it could be so much worse. Suppose it would be like somebody like Dick Cheney, who would be, he would be in there making plans every day, doing something. Biden, at least he's not harming anybody too bad. So,
But doesn't it show that, if he's got like Alzheimer's or whatever, doesn't it show that he has zero power? Obviously, someone else is calling the shots because this guy can't even, function.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. It's just a show position. I don't really think anybody thinks. Well, there's a huge swath of people that believe in the two-party system and they believe that whole thing, but I don't. And there's a lot of people like me who go, who's really running the show? Is Kissinger still running the show? Is Klaus Schwab really running the show? Klaus Schwab snaps his fingers and 15, 20 Republican senators show up at Davos like they're lapdogs. Like, what's going on? They come in and do Bilderberg in Washington, D.C., and everybody's frothing at the mouth over there to get to the hotel. To me, the guy doing the deals right now is Schwab. And Kissinger is not getting out of bed, but he's making the phone call to Schwab, and they're talking it over. Kolomoisky's kind of one of their guys that goes and creates the wars, but nobody's coming over and saying, President Biden, we just got a communique. What do we do? No, somebody's laying out his clothes, and then somebody else comes in and says, well, your first appointment is with the choir club of, Detroit, and he, I'm sure, thinks it plans his day around bathroom breaks. It's like, when is my bathroom break going to be? And he looks good in a suit still. He's in good shape. So
where does Schwab get his power from? And does he represent certain people is he the face of something else?
Well, Schwab goes back. I just had gone to Oberammergau, and I was just at the G7, and in Oberammergau is the NATO spy school. And that's where Kissinger started as a professor at 23 years old. And Schwab's father was one of the key guys in Ravensburg. And I spent about 4 days in Ravensburg where he grew up, and was one of the key guys, was on the Nazi rat line. It was not just the rat line for scientists, but it was also a lot of the German intelligence folks and a lot of the gold that ended up going over to Basel, Switzerland. So his father, Eugene, was very instrumental in taking a lot of the Nazi technology. The Nazis had moved from the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute. They'd moved their nuclear program down near Ravensburg. And so they ended up doing these nozzles and separation technologies and also turbines for nuclear. And then it ended up selling a lot of that technology to Israel and South Africa, Iraq, Iran, etc. So Schwab, the World Economic Forum, really was a front company, I believe, to sell to South Africa, because it became very not a good thing to sell to South Africa in the late 70s. I visited the headquarters. They're on one side of Lake Geneva. And literally, you look straight across the lake from where Klaus's office is, and look straight at Tedros's office at WHO. I mean, it's almost like he could take a little sailboat and say, we're going to declare an emergency, health emergency today in Lower Slobovia, because we want and then just send the boat right across. That's what's happening right now. The power center is this ability for the WHO to call these emergencies, and you lock down the country, and then with relatively few people, you can take over everything. Sign a deal with the foreign minister to get an energy deal. Sign a deal over here with the defense minister to get a weapons deal. It's sort of like the CIA in the old days, before they had to work too hard, like Guatemala. Frank Wisner and Frank Sturgis, or whatever his name was, all those guys, they said, we took Guatemala with like 8 guys because we locked down the ports. We had control of the press. We put out some propaganda. Everybody stayed home. Whoop. Did I lose you, Sean?
Just changing my camera battery. Keep going.
Oh, okay. Sorry. It's like this guy's droning on. He's blown through another battery.
More like Schwab shutting us down.
There you go. So I haven't really been looking much at the chat, but you have a great chat, very active chat.
Yeah, you've got some questions coming. I'll put those to you. I mean, there's so much. We've only got 15 minutes left,
Huh?
but we could have talked for hours. So, going back to Camilla earlier, what can you tell us about sonic weapons? That's from Jake.
Camilla. You mean Camilla? Okay. Well, there was an interesting experiment being done. It looked like at the Cuban embassy, and this sort of edge weapons, the wonder weapons. It's always an area of speculation, right? Because it's cutting edge and nobody knows, and these are very secret things. But we're into the realm of speculation, so put the red speculation lights, high octane speculation alert. But I think the number one ambition of an operation that they called Blackjack, and this was the MERS SARS-2 program, was the ability to image terrorists and image them from space and figure out who are the terrorists and then who are the good guys that are just neutrals, or our guys, even more important. And that's easy when they're out in a Tora Bora in a cave. But then they need to come together. They mix in a crowd, and then you have to be able to pick them out. Well, if you can put something on their clothing, okay, a nanoparticle, a quantum dot, or whatever, and let's just say this orange Auburn tiger here is a quantum dot. Hey, I can tell the difference between Sean and George because the quantum dot. But what happens when I change the shirt, right? If there was some way of getting people to just naturally ingest the quantum dot, the nanotechnology, the graphene, through either shots like a vaccine, or through vaping, or through the food, or through the water, and they just naturally would accumulate this, sort of like you accumulate tar in the lungs. And then we could have some devices, let's just say this is a Internet of Things device, the microphone here, and we go, hey, I'm close enough that I can sense that this is the terrorist. This is the bad guy. Or when you go through a Leidos detector at the airport. I know it's a long answer to the sonic question, but so we started following this and looking at this nanotechnology, which is really interesting because it turns out if you use a ferrous thing, which is a magnetoferrous that responds and images much better. It's what they use in imaging for lung imaging and so forth, much better than non-ferrous. So if you use these graphene particles, nanofarad and particles, and they naturally accumulate, you can say, okay, we sprayed this dust at Tora Bora, so he's got the Tora Bora dust in his lungs. This is a Osama bin Laden guy here. But now I can also, if I have some of the technology high end, 5G going up to 6G, more terahertz wave, but high energy. Lockheed has a thing called the Guardian and so forth. I can actually warm somebody's blood at a distance. And I can just shoot this at a crowd. The Guardian, I've seen it demonstrated, and it'll actually start heating up the blood to the point where it's uncomfortable and the people will stand down. Now, if you have a lot of the Tora Bora nanoparticles in your blood heats up a lot faster, and it affects the terrorists in the crowd more than it does the normal, right? So I think this is the future. This is how they're going to decide between who they want to keep if they ever had that, make that decision, and who they want to get rid of. So I think the sonic technology is a variant on that theme. All these high-end energy, direct energy type schemes are basically trying to get at the same idea, which is, can we tag and trace the bad guys and keep separate the good guys, the neutrals, and keep track of our good guys? And this project I've been following for 20 years now, this Operation Blackjack, I think is the key technology. This guy, these badasses in Europe, the NATO spy schools are the key guys, Enrico and Giuseppe, and then this Pietro. So there's three of them, all the same last name, working on this high-end graphene imaging for NATO. So that's my answer to the sonic question.
No,
I'm sorry.
we
That was a
love
long answer.
we love long answers on this channel. The more detail, the better. And you say it
Okay.
all with a smile on your face, but this is seriously scary stuff.
Yeah.
I'm,
Yeah.
I'm terrified hearing this stuff, George.
Yeah.
Easy E has put a follow-on comment. What's your thoughts on China cooking Indian soldiers from the inside out a few years back during a skirmish with a microwave-type weapon?
Yeah, I do think this does exist. Everybody thinks that Star Wars and doesn't the do weapons don't exist. They do. They really do exist. I actually was lived right across from a Navy training center where they tested this stuff. You get high enough energies, and you cycle a small nuclear device back and forth between critical and subcritical and so forth, and you get pulse it's called. You can generate a tremendous amount of energy. And like I say, if you have some absorptive things in your body, then you can create the heat effects to the point where you can make it very uncomfortable, or like the person saying, cooking the person actually. I think it's called the Lockheed Guardian. If you think this is woo-woo, crazy talk, just Google that, and then you're going to be surprised.